My mom wanted me to drop out of college to support their lazy golden son's big dreams. When I refused, I was 3 weeks into my junior year at Penn State when my mother called with exciting news. The way her voice lifted at the end of each sentence should have been my first warning. My brother Derek had finally found his passion. He wants to open a gastropub, she announced, as though this were a revelation on par with discovering penicillin. A farm-to-table concept with craft beverages. He's been researching it for months. Derek was 26. In the 8 years since high school, his passions had included day trading, lost $3,000 of dad's money, a food truck specializing in gourmet grilled cheese, sold the truck after 2 months, real estate photography, bought $4,000 in equipment, took maybe 15 photos, and most recently, a podcast about disrupting the wellness industry that lasted exactly 4 episodes. That sounds interesting, I said, non-committal. I was sitting in the library, my engineering economy textbook open in front of me. I had an exam in 2 days. Your father and I have been discussing how we can help him get started. She paused. The silence stretched long enough that I knew something bad was coming. We think this could really be the one, Marcus. Derek has such vision. Vision. Right. Derek had vision the way a kaleidoscope has vision, lots of pretty, shifting patterns that never quite formed into anything solid. We'd like you to come home this weekend to discuss some family financial planning. I should have said no right then. But I was 20 years old, and some part of me still wanted to believe my parents saw me as more than just the reliable son, the one who didn't need attention because he never caused problems. I drove home that Friday afternoon. Our house sat in a decent suburb of Harrisburg, a 4-bedroom colonial that my parents had stretched to afford. Dad was a regional manager for a medical supply company. Mom had worked part-time as a dental hygienist until Derek was born, then never went back. Derek's Audi was in the driveway. My 10-year-old Honda Civic looked pitiful next to it. That car had been a graduation gift for Derek, for graduating high school, barely. I'd gotten a $200 check and a pat on the back for graduating with a 3.9 GPA. Mom had made pot roast. Dad was already at the table, looking tired. He always looked tired. Derek sat across from him, scrolling through his phone. Marcus. Sweetie. Mom pulled me into a hug that lasted a fraction too long, the way she did when she wanted something. How was the drive? Fine. Traffic wasn't bad. Derek glanced up. Hey, bro. Looking good. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were on his screen. We made it through dinner with small talk. Mom asked about my classes. I told her about my thermodynamics course, the research project I'd been asked to join. She nodded, but her eyes kept drifting to Derek, as though checking to make sure he wasn't feeling left out. After dessert, Dad cleared his throat. So, your mother and I have been looking at Derek's business proposal. Here it came. It's really solid, Dad continued. He didn't sound convinced. He's found a location, worked out supplier relationships, even talked to a contractor about renovations. I looked at Derek. He'd finally put down his phone and was leaning back in his chair with this satisfied smile, like everything was already decided. The thing is, Mom jumped in, the startup costs are higher than we initially thought. The build-out alone is going to be close to $80,000. My stomach dropped. We've got about 40 in savings, Dad said. And we can take out a home equity loan for another 30. But that still leaves us short, and Derek needs working capital for the first 6 months of operation. I did the math in my head. They were about to ask for money I didn't have. I was on partial scholarship, working 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, and taking out loans for the rest. I had maybe $1,800 in my checking account. We're not asking you for money, Mom said quickly, reading my face. Relief flooded through me for exactly 3 seconds. But we've been looking at the numbers, and your tuition and living expenses come to about $32,000 a year, she said it gently, like she was suggesting I try a new restaurant. If you took a gap year, just 1 year, that would free up the money Derek needs to get started. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. You want me to drop out of college? My voice sounded flat, distant. Not drop out, Dad said. Just pause. You're doing so well, Marcus. 1 year won't make a difference. You could work full-time, get some real-world experience. Derek's window of opportunity is closing, Mom added. The property owner has another interested party. If Derek doesn't move fast, he'll lose this location. I looked at my brother. He met my eyes for the first time all night. It would mean a lot, man, he said. Family supporting family, you know? The rational part of my brain was cataloging everything wrong with his plan. I was halfway through my degree. I had momentum, connections with professors, a spot in a competitive research program. Gap years in engineering didn't work the way they did in liberal arts. You lost continuity, forgot fundamentals, fell behind peers who kept moving forward. But the emotional part of my brain was stuck on something simpler, They were willing to sacrifice my future for Derek's latest whim. I need to think about it, I said. Mom's face brightened. Of course. Take the weekend. We don't need an answer until Sunday. I barely slept that night. I kept playing the conversation over in my head, looking for the moment where I could have misunderstood, where this could be something other than what it was. Saturday morning, I called my girlfriend, Rachel. We'd been dating since freshman year. They want you to do what? Her voice went up an octave. I explained the whole thing. She listened without interrupting. Marcus, that's insane. You can't drop out. You're literally at the top of your class. It's just a year. You don't believe that. She was right. I didn't. What happens when the gastropub fails in 6 months? What happens when Derek finds his next passion project? Maybe it won't fail. His grilled cheese truck failed. His podcast failed. Everything he touches fails because he doesn't actually want to work. He wants to be the guy with the successful business, but he doesn't want to do the boring parts. The daily grind. The problem solving. I knew she was right. But there was this other part of me, the part that had been trained since Derek was born to be understanding, to be flexible, to make room for my brother's needs. They're my parents, I said weakly. And you're their son. Not just Derek's backup plan. When Sunday arrived, I still hadn't decided. Mom made pancakes, Derek's favorite. We sat around the table, and I could feel the expectation pressing down on me. So, Dad said, setting down his coffee. Have you had a chance to think about our proposal? I looked at each of them. Mom's hopeful face. Dad's careful neutrality. Derek's casual confidence. I can't do it, I said. I'm sorry, but I can't drop out. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Can't or won't? Mom's voice had gone sharp. Both. I'm halfway through my degree. Stopping now doesn't make sense. It makes sense for this family, she snapped. Derek has an opportunity that won't wait. Then Derek needs to find another way to finance it. Bank loans exist. Investors exist. Derek laughed, actually laughed. Banks aren't exactly lining up to fund first-time restaurant owners. And investors want a track record. Then maybe that's telling you something. What's that supposed to mean? His voice had an edge now. It means if this business were as solid as everyone keeps saying, you'd be able to find funding. Mom stood up. I can't believe you're being this selfish. Your brother is finally taking initiative, and you want to sabotage it. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm protecting my own future. Your future will still be there in a year. She was almost shouting now. Derek's opportunity won't be. Dad held up his hands. Everyone calm down. Marcus, I understand your concerns. But your mother and I have thought this through. We believe Derek's business has real potential. Based on what? His track record of abandoned projects? That's enough, Dad said sharply. Those were learning experiences. Derek's more mature now. I looked at Derek. He was staring at his plate, jaw tight. For a second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered he was willing to let me sacrifice my education for his dream. I'm going back to school, I said, standing. I'm sorry I can't help you the way you want. I packed my bag, said cold goodbyes, and drove back to State College. I called Rachel from the car. I told them no. Good. I could hear the relief in her voice. How did they take it? About as well as you'd expect. The next few weeks were radio silence from home. No calls, no texts. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. I threw myself into my classes, picked up extra shifts at the bookstore. Then, 6 weeks after the dinner, Mom called. Your father and I have decided to take out a larger loan, she said, her tone formal. Derek will be opening his restaurant next month. That's good, I said carefully. I hope it goes well. It will. No, thanks to you. She hung up. Rachel was right. I needed to protect myself. If my family was willing to treat me this way over money, I needed to be smart about my future. I graduated on time, 2 years later, with a 3.7 GPA and a job offer from a petroleum engineering firm in Houston. Starting salary, $87,000. I'd also been careful to file my taxes independently since the confrontation, ensuring my financial aid wasn't tied to my parents' income. Derek's gastropub, the Harvest Table, had opened to moderate fanfare. My parents had taken out a $60,000 home equity loan. They'd also cashed in Dad's emergency fund and most of their retirement contributions for that year. I didn't go to the opening. Mom didn't invite me. I moved to Houston that June. Rachel came with me. She'd gotten into a graduate program at Rice. We rented a small apartment in Montrose, started building a life. The Harvest Table lasted 14 months. Dad called to tell me, his voice heavy. Derek's closing the restaurant. I'm sorry to hear that. I was at my desk at work. Out my window, I could see the Houston skyline. He gave it everything he had, but the location just didn't have enough foot traffic. This wasn't entirely true, I'd later learn. Derek had hired his friends to work there, paid them above market rate, and rarely showed up himself. He'd changed the menu 4 times in a year, confusing customers. He'd gotten into disputes with suppliers over payment schedules. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "We'll figure it out. The loan payments are manageable." They weren't. I found out later that Dad had to push his retirement back by 5 years. Mom went back to work full-time at 53, her back already giving her problems. Derek moved back into their house. He started talking about his next venture, some kind of fitness app. I sent my parents a check for $5,000 that Christmas. Not to gloat, not to say I told you so. Just to help. Mom cashed it without comment. Years passed. I got promoted to senior engineer, then project manager. Rachel and I got married. We bought a house with a yard and 2 guest bedrooms we hoped would someday be filled with kids. Derek bounced between ideas and jobs. He sold supplements for a multi-level marketing company for a while. He got a real estate license but never closed a deal. He moved out of my parents' house twice, moved back in twice. When I was 28, Dad had a heart attack. Not fatal, but serious enough to require surgery and lifestyle changes. Mom called me from the hospital. "Can you come home?" I flew out the next day. Dad looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires running from his arms. Mom looked exhausted. "Where's Derek?" I asked. He had a job interview he couldn't miss. Mom didn't meet my eyes when she said it. I stayed for a week, helping Mom manage the insurance paperwork, talking to doctors, making sure Dad followed his medication schedule. Derek showed up once, stayed for 20 minutes, left because he had a thing. On my last night there, Dad asked to talk to me alone. "I need to tell you something," he said. "And I need you to listen without getting angry." I pulled a chair close to his bed. "Okay. Your mother and I made a mistake. With Derek. With you." He paused, gathering strength. "We thought we were helping him by always bailing him out. We thought we were being fair by treating you both the same, even when you needed different things. I didn't say anything. We asked you to give up too much. We took you for granted because you never complained. And Derek never learned to stand on his own because we never let him fall. Dad, let me finish. I'm proud of you, son. Not just because you're successful, but because you did it with integrity. You set boundaries. You knew your worth." His eyes were wet. "I should have told you that a long time ago." Something in my chest that had been tight for years loosened just slightly. "I forgive you," I said. And I meant it. Dad recovered slowly. He retired the following year, earlier than he'd planned but later than his doctor recommended. Mom kept working. They downsized to a smaller house, sold the Colonial, used the equity to pay off the restaurant loan. Derek was 33 when he finally hit bottom. He'd been living with a girlfriend who got tired of supporting him and kicked him out. He showed up at my parents' new place with everything he owned in his Audi, which he'd somehow managed to keep through all the failures. Mom called me, crying. "I don't know what to do anymore. We can't keep doing this." "Then don't," I said gently. "Tell him he needs to figure it out. He's our son." "So am I, and you let me figure it out." There was a long silence. Then, "You're right. You're absolutely right." I don't know exactly what my parents said to Derek that day, but something shifted. They gave him 3 months to find a job in his own place. Just 3 months, but with actual consequences. Derek got a job as a manager at a chain restaurant. It wasn't glamorous. He wasn't the owner, wasn't the visionary. He was just a guy making $42,000 a year, managing inventory and scheduling servers. But he kept the job. A year passed, then 2. He got promoted to general manager. He moved into his own apartment, nothing fancy, but his own place. When he was 36, he called me. We hadn't spoken directly in years. "Hey," he said. "I know this is random. But I wanted to say something." I waited. I was a jerk. For a long time. I let Mom and Dad sacrifice for me, and I let them ask you to sacrifice too. I thought I deserved it because I was chasing dreams, but really I was just afraid of real work. I sat down on my couch. Rachel looked over from the kitchen, curious. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. What you were trying to tell me back then. About earning things. About building something real instead of just chasing the idea of success." We talked for an hour. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. Derek's still managing that restaurant. He's been there 6 years now. He's dating someone who works in medical billing, someone with her own career and boundaries. He drives a sensible used car. He's building a normal, stable life. My parents are in their late 60s now. They're okay, not wealthy but comfortable. Dad's health has stabilized. Mom finally retired last year. They visit us in Houston sometimes, meet our friends, admire the life Rachel and I have built. Last month, they came for Thanksgiving. Derek drove down too, brought his girlfriend Sarah. We all sat around our dining table, and it was almost normal. Almost like a real family dinner. After everyone left, Rachel and I were cleaning up the kitchen. "Your parents seem different," she said. "Lighter, somehow." "They are. Derek's not a weight around their necks anymore." "Do you think they really understand what they put you through?" I thought about it, drying a wine glass. "I think they understand some of it. Maybe not all of it. But they're trying." "Is that enough for you?" "It has to be. Holding on to anger doesn't change the past. It just makes the present heavier." She kissed my cheek. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," I said, pulling her close. "The truth is, I don't know if my family will ever fully grasp what they asked of me that Sunday 8 years ago. I don't know if Derek understands how close he came to derailing my entire future for a dream he wasn't ready to nurture. But I know I made the right choice. I know that protecting my education, my path, my future wasn't selfish, it was necessary. And I know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people is refuse to enable their worst patterns." Update 1, 6 months later. I didn't expect this post to blow up the way it did. Thank you to everyone who shared their own stories of family dysfunction and golden children. It helps to know I'm not alone in this experience. A lot has happened since I first posted, and I wanted to share an update because several people asked, and because writing this out has been oddly therapeutic. First, my parents saw the original post. My cousin Jennifer, who I didn't realize was on Reddit, recognized the story and sent it to my mom. I got an angry call about airing family business to strangers, which was ironic given that Mom had spent years telling anyone who would listen about Derek's various ventures. The call was tense. Mom accused me of trying to make them look bad. I told her I'd changed names and identifying details, and that I'd shared my truth. If my truth made them uncomfortable, maybe that was something they needed to sit with. We didn't talk for a few weeks after that. Then Dad called. "Your mother is upset," he said. "But she's also been doing some thinking." "About what?" "About a lot of things. She's been in therapy." This surprised me. Mom had always been skeptical of therapy, calling it paying someone to tell you what you already know. "The therapist has her working through some stuff about her own childhood," Dad continued. "About how her parents favored her sister, and how that shaped the way she parented you and Derek." I didn't know what to say to that. "Anyway, she's not ready to talk yet, but she wanted you to know she's working on herself. And so am I." They'd started couples counseling too. Apparently, Dad had been holding in a lot of resentment about the restaurant fiasco, about the financial strain, about watching Derek flounder while I succeeded from a distance. The second major development involved Derek. Remember how I mentioned he'd been dating Sarah? They got engaged last month. Derek called to tell me personally. "I want you to be my best man," he said. I almost dropped the phone. "Seriously?" "Yeah. I know we've had our issues. I know I was a terrible brother for a long time. But you're the person I look up to most. You're who I want standing next to me." Rachel thought I should say yes. "It's a peace offering," she said. "And Derek has actually changed. You've said so yourself." I agreed to do it, but with a condition. Derek and I needed to have an honest conversation first, really honest, not just surface-level apologies. We met for lunch at a barbecue place halfway between Houston and where he lives now. It was awkward at first, both of us pushing brisket around our plates. "I read what you wrote," Derek said finally. "On Reddit." My stomach dropped. "How did you?" "Jennifer sent it to Mom. Mom told me about it." I looked it up. He set down his fork. Every word was true. That's the part that hurt the most. "You didn't exaggerate or make me sound worse than I was. That's actually who I was. You're different now." "I'm trying to be. But Marcus, I need you to know something. I knew what I was doing back then. When Mom and Dad asked you to drop out, I knew it was wrong. I knew you were the one with the actual future. But I was so caught up in my own ego, in this fantasy of being a successful entrepreneur, that I let it happen. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to hear it. And because Sarah won't marry me unless I clean up all my relationships. She's met you and Rachel, and she could tell there was this unspoken tension. She said she won't build a marriage on top of family dysfunction." I liked Sarah more and more. We talked for 3 hours. Derek told me about the moment he finally understood what our parents had done, not just to me but to him. It was about a year into his restaurant management job, when he'd successfully handled a health inspection, a staffing crisis, and a broken freezer all in the same week. "I realized I was actually good at something," he said. "Not the glamorous parts of running a business, but the real work. The problem solving, the follow through. And I realized I could have been good at this all along if I hadn't been so focused on being special." "Being special is overrated," I said. "Yeah. Being competent is better." The third development was the most unexpected. My company offered me a position in our Dallas office, a significant promotion that would put me in charge of a whole regional division. The catch was we'd have to move from Houston. Rachel and I talked about it for weeks. We loved Houston. We'd built a life there. But Dallas would put us closer to family, and the promotion was too good to pass up. We're moving next month. We've already found a house in a suburb with good schools, planning ahead for the kids we hope to have soon. Being closer to my parents feels different now than it would have a few years ago. They're actively working on themselves. Mom actually apologized to me last week, a real apology that didn't include any justifications or excuses. "I made you feel invisible," she said over the phone. "I made you feel like your needs didn't matter as much as Derek's wants. And I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry." I cried after we hung up. Rachel held me while I processed years of hurt that I'd packed away in a box labeled "things we don't talk about." Derek's wedding is in April. I'm helping him plan his bachelor party, something low-key since he doesn't drink much anymore. Sarah's been wonderful about including Rachel in the wedding planning, asking her opinion on flowers and venues. At the last family dinner, Mom pulled out old photo albums. There were pictures of me I'd never seen, debate team competitions and science fairs she'd attended but never mentioned. In every photo, she was smiling. "I was proud of you," she said quietly. "I just didn't know how to show it. You never seemed to need the validation the way Derek did." "Everyone needs validation, Mom. I just learned to live without it from you." She closed the album. "I'm going to do better. I know I can't fix the past, but I can be better going forward." Someone in the comments on my original post said that families are like mobiles. When one piece shifts, everything else has to rebalance. That's what's happening now. We're all finding our new positions, figuring out how to be a family that's healthier than the one we were. Derek asked me to look over his wedding budget last week. He and Sarah are paying for everything themselves, keeping it modest but meaningful. "I don't want Mom and Dad to pay for anything," he told me. "They've paid enough for my mistakes." I helped him find ways to cut costs without sacrificing what mattered. It felt good, helping my brother with something real instead of watching him chase impossible dreams with other people's money. Rachel's pregnant. We found out 2 weeks ago. We haven't told my family yet, waiting until the second trimester to be safe. But the thought of our child growing up with this new version of our family, with an uncle who's learned accountability and grandparents who are working on their issues, makes me hopeful. Not everything is perfect. There are still moments of tension, still old patterns that try to reassert themselves. But we're all aware of them now, all actively choosing different responses. The other day, Derek sent me a text, "Thank you for saying no. I don't think I ever said that. But, thank you for not enabling me. I'd probably still be living in Mom and Dad's basement if you'd dropped out and given me that money. You'd have figured it out eventually," I wrote back. "Maybe. But it would have taken longer. And cost everyone more." He's right. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to save them from themselves. Update 2, 1 year later. My daughter Emma was born 3 months ago. She has Rachel's eyes and what my dad calls the family chin, though which side of the family he means is unclear. Derek and Sarah got married in April, a beautiful outdoor ceremony at a state park. Derek cried during his vows. Sarah cried. I definitely didn't cry, except I completely did. In his toast at the reception, Derek talked about second chances and the people who believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. He looked at Sarah when he said it, but also at me. Later, when we were both a little emotionally overwhelmed and hiding out by the dessert table, he squeezed my shoulder. "I'm glad you're my brother," he said simply. "Yeah, me too." Mom and Dad met Emma when she was 2 weeks old. Mom held her with this expression of wonder I'd never seen before, like she was seeing something clearly for the first time. "You're going to be an amazing father," she told me. "You already are." Dad set up a college fund for Emma. "It's not huge, but it's a start. More than the money, though," was what he said when he told me about it. "Every kid deserves to have their education prioritized. No exceptions." Derek and Sarah are trying for a baby now. Derek jokes that he needs to learn to be a functional adult before he's responsible for creating a new one, but he's being too hard on himself. He's been the assistant general manager at his restaurant for a year. His boss is retiring next year and has recommended Derek as his replacement. "It's not a gastropub," Derek said when he told me about the promotion. "It's a chain restaurant in a strip mall. But it's honest work, and I'm good at it." "That's what matters," I told him. My new position in Dallas has been challenging but rewarding. I manage a team of 20 engineers now, and I find myself thinking a lot about leadership, about how to support people without enabling them, how to push them to grow without breaking them. One of my engineers, a kid fresh out of college named Tyler, reminds me of Derek in some ways, brilliant but unfocused, full of ideas but short on follow-through. I've been mentoring him, helping him channel his creativity into actionable plans. "You believe in me more than my own dad does," Tyler told me once. "I believe in who you can become," I corrected. But you have to do the work to get there. Rachel went back to work part-time when Emma was 8 weeks old. We have a nanny 3 days a week, and my mom comes up from Harrisburg once a month to help out. Those visits have been surprisingly healing. Mom rocks Emma to sleep and tells me stories about when I was a baby, stories I'd never heard. "You were such an easy child," she said during her last visit. "You slept through the night at 6 weeks. You rarely cried. I thought that meant you didn't need me as much." All kids need their parents, Mom. They just express it differently. I know that now. Therapy has done wonders for my parents. They're both more open, more willing to examine their patterns. Dad talks about how he retreated into work to avoid dealing with family dysfunction. Mom talks about how she tried to fix Derek because she couldn't fix herself. They're not perfect. Old habits still surface sometimes. Last month, Derek mentioned he was thinking about getting a master's degree in hospitality management, and Mom immediately started researching programs and costs. Dad had to gently remind her that Derek was 37 and capable of doing his own research. "Right," she said, catching herself. "Sorry. Old patterns." But she's learning. They both are. Sarah had a miscarriage in June. It was early, just 7 weeks, but it devastated them both. Derek called me from the hospital parking lot, his voice wrecked. "I thought I was ready," he said. "I thought I'd done the work, become the right kind of person. And now this. It's not punishment, Derek. These things happen. They're awful, but they happen." "I know." Sarah's doctor said the same thing. "But it feels like I'm still paying for all those wasted years." That's not how life works. You're not cursed. You're just human, dealing with a human tragedy. They took some time to grieve, then decided to try again when they were ready. Sarah told Rachel she felt grateful to have Derek as a partner through it, that he'd shown up for her in ways she'd never seen from him before. "He's learned how to be present," Sarah said. "That's not nothing." Emma's christening was last month. We had it at a small church near our house, nothing elaborate. Derek and Sarah are her godparents. Mom helped plan the reception. Dad gave a toast about family and second chances and the grace of new beginnings. Looking around the room at my family, imperfect, still figuring things out, but trying, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just forgiveness, which I'd given them already, but actual peace. Someone commented on my original post that families are like renovations. You can't just paint over the cracks and call it fixed. You have to dig down to the foundation, repair the structural damage, rebuild from a place of integrity. That's what we've been doing. The renovation isn't finished. Maybe it never will be. But the foundation is solid now in a way it wasn't before. Last week, Derek sent me a photo. He was at work, standing in front of the restaurant with a new sign, "General Manager, Derek Morrison." "First day in the new role," his text said. "Couldn't have gotten here without you telling me no 8 years ago." I showed the photo to Rachel. She smiled. "Think you'll ever tell him you're proud of him?" "I already did. Last week, actually." "How'd he take it?" "He cried. Then he made a joke about allergies. Then he said, 'Thank you.'" Emma started fussing, wanting to be fed. I picked her up, marveling at how something so small could be so perfect, so full of potential. "What are you thinking about?" Rachel asked. "I'm thinking about the person Emma's going to become. The choices she'll have to make. The family she'll have behind her." "She'll have all of us," Rachel said. "The functional version, at least. The work-in-progress version. That's all anyone can ask for." Derek and Sarah are coming for Christmas. Mom and Dad too. We'll fill our house with the complicated love of family that's been broken and repaired, bent but not destroyed. I used to think the story of my family was about betrayal, about choosing myself over their collective delusion. But I understand now it's more complicated than that. It's about boundaries that create space for growth. It's about saying no to dysfunction so everyone has room to say yes to something better. The gastropub failed, but Derek didn't. My parents made terrible mistakes, but they're not terrible people. I set boundaries that felt cruel at the time, but they were necessary for everyone's evolution. Emma will grow up knowing her Uncle Derek as a stable, responsible adult. She'll know her grandparents as people who acknowledge their mistakes and work to do better. And hopefully, she'll know her dad as someone who loved his family enough to tell them hard truths, and who loved himself enough to protect his own path. That's not revenge, exactly. But it's a kind of payback, the kind where everyone wins, eventually, if they're willing to do the work. Sarah's pregnant again. They told us last week, cautiously hopeful. Mom cried when she heard. Dad opened a college fund for their future child immediately. "I'm doing it differently this time," Dad told me privately. "Equal amounts for both grandchildren, set aside from the beginning. No favorites." "That's good, Dad. It's what I should have done all along." Rachel and I are thinking about having another child, maybe in a year or two when Emma's a bit older. We talk about the family we're building, the legacy we want to leave. Your family gave you a gift, Rachel said the other night. Not the one they meant to give, but a gift nonetheless. They taught you exactly what not to do. She's right. Every time I hold Emma, every decision I make about her future, I'm informed by my past. By what I needed and didn't get, by what Derek got and didn't need, by the ways my parents loved us imperfectly but genuinely. Derek's text tone just went off. I pick up my phone. Dinner at our place next Sunday? Sarah's making her famous lasagna. Fair warning, she's going to ask you 10,000 questions about Emma and babies and if it's too soon to buy a crib. I text back, we'll be there. Tell her Emma slept 4 hours straight last night. Let Sarah interpret that however she wants. 3 dots appear. Then, she just screamed. Pretty sure the neighbors think we won the lottery. I smile, imagining Derek and Sarah in their small apartment, planning for their future child, building the life they both chose. Not the life my parents funded or enabled, but the one Derek earned through years of actual work and growth. From the nursery, I hear Emma starting to wake up. Rachel's in the shower, so I head in to get our daughter. She looks up at me with those serious eyes, trying to focus on my face. Hey, little one, I say softly. Ready to start the day? She makes a small noise that could be agreement or gas. I choose to interpret it as agreement. In the living room, I can see the family photo from Derek's wedding. All of us together, smiling, genuinely happy. It sits next to our wedding photo, and a picture of Emma's first day home from the hospital. These are the moments that matter. Not the gastropub that failed, not the college fund that was almost sacrificed, not the years of resentment and dysfunction. Those things happened, they shaped us, but they don't define us anymore. What defines us now is this: a family that fell apart and chose to rebuild. A brother who learned humility. Parents who learned accountability. And me, learning that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing to write a better future than the past you were given. Emma nestles into my shoulder, her small hand gripping my shirt. In this moment, holding my daughter while my wife sings off-key in the shower, thinking about Sunday dinner with my brother and his wife and my parents, I realize something profound. I won. Not because I proved them wrong or because Derek failed and I succeeded. I won because I protected something precious, my own potential, and in doing so, I accidentally taught everyone around me how to protect theirs. The best revenge isn't about making others suffer for their mistakes. It's about building a life so authentic, so grounded in your own worth, that it forces everyone around you to reconsider their choices. It's about loving yourself enough to say no when no is needed, and loving others enough to let them face the consequences of their actions. Derek's learning that now. My parents learned it. And someday, when Emma's old enough, I'll teach it to her too. Not through lectures or warnings, but through the example of a father who knew his worth and refused to compromise it, even when the people he loved most asked him to. That's the real story. Not dramatic revenge or bitter payback, but the quiet revolution of becoming the person you were meant to be, regardless of who tries to stop you. And maybe, if you're lucky, bringing everyone else along for the journey. The months following Emma's birth brought unexpected clarity about just how deep the damage had run. Rachel and I were navigating the sleepless chaos of new parenthood when Mom came for one of her monthly visits. She was holding Emma, singing some lullaby I vaguely remembered from childhood, when she suddenly stopped mid-verse. "I never did this with you," she said quietly. I looked up from the bottle I was preparing. "Did what?" "Just sat and held you. Just enjoyed you." She adjusted Emma in her arms. "With you, I was always multitasking. Holding you while folding laundry, feeding you while watching TV. Like you were just another task on my list. Mom, you don't have to." But with Derek, I would just stare at him for hours. Study his face. I thought it was because he was fussy and needed more attention, but that wasn't it. I just loved him differently. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I loved him more obviously. And you felt it, didn't you? Even as a little boy." I'd spent years in therapy working through this exact issue. Hearing her finally acknowledge it felt like something breaking open inside my chest. "Yeah," I said. "I felt it. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I can't change what I did, but I need you to know I see it now. And it was never about you being less. It was about me being broken." We talked for hours that night, after Emma was asleep. Mom told me about her childhood, about being the overlooked middle child while her younger sister got all the attention for being delicate and artistic. She'd sworn she wouldn't repeat that pattern, then did exactly that with Derek. "I thought I was correcting my parents' mistakes," she said. "But I just made different ones." Dad opened up more during their next visit. We were in my garage, ostensibly organizing tools, when he started talking about his own father. "He was a hard man," Dad said. "Nothing was ever good enough. I got straight A's," he asked why they weren't A+. "I made the baseball team," he asked why I wasn't starting pitcher. "I didn't know that. I never talked about it. But when you were born, I promised myself I wouldn't be like him. I'd be supportive, understanding. And when Derek struggled in school, I saw a chance to be the dad I wished I'd had. The one who didn't demand perfection. But you overcorrected, I said. I did. And in trying not to be too hard on Derek, I forgot to be present with you at all. You were achieving everything on your own, so I convinced myself you didn't need me. But everyone needs their father to show up, to say they're proud. He set down the wrench he'd been holding. I'm proud of you, son. Not just your career or your family. I'm proud of the man you became despite us, not because of us. These conversations were happening in parallel with Derek's own evolution. He and Sarah lost their second pregnancy too, this one at 12 weeks. Derek called me from the hospital again, but this time he sounded different. Not defeated, just sad. I think we need to take a break from trying, he said. Sarah's body needs rest, and honestly, so does our mental health. That's probably wise. The thing is, I realized something. I've spent my whole life chasing the next thing, you know? The next business idea, the next opportunity, the next chance to prove I was worth something. And now with the miscarriages, I was doing the same thing. Like having a baby would finally make me legitimate. You're already legitimate, Derek. I'm starting to believe that. Sarah's been amazing. She keeps reminding me that we're enough, just the two of us, right now. That we don't need a baby to validate our marriage or my manhood or whatever I'm trying to prove. They adopted a rescue dog instead, a three-legged pit bull mix named Frank. Derek sent me daily photos, Frank on the couch, Frank in the yard, Frank wearing a ridiculous Halloween costume. The love in those photos was obvious and unguarded. Sarah says I'm a great dog dad, Derek texted one day. Maybe that's enough for now. Work brought its own challenges and revelations. Tyler, the young engineer I'd been mentoring, came to me with an opportunity. A startup wanted to hire him, double his salary, make him a senior engineer despite having just 2 years of experience. What do you think I should do? He asked. I thought about what I would have wanted someone to tell me at his age. Not what would benefit the company, but what would benefit him. What does your gut say? That it sounds too good to be true. That they're probably overpromising. That I'm not ready to be a senior engineer. Then you have your answer. But the money will come. What you need right now is to build real skills, real experience. This startup might pay more, but are you going to learn more? He stayed. 6 months later, the startup folded. Tyler came to my office with a bottle of decent whiskey. You saved me from making a huge mistake, he said. I just asked you a question. You saved yourself. But the interaction stayed with me. I'd become the mentor I wished someone had been for Derek. The person who asked hard questions instead of enabling fantasies, who cared enough to let people struggle toward their own answers. Emma turned 6 months old. She was sleeping better, smiling constantly, starting to show hints of personality. Mom and Dad threw her a half-birthday party, which was objectively ridiculous but also sweet. Derek and Sarah came, brought Frank the dog, who was surprisingly gentle with the baby. At one point, I found Derek sitting on our back porch, watching Sarah play with Emma through the window. You ever think about how different things could be? He asked. Different how? If you'd said yes. If you'd dropped out, given them the money for my restaurant. He turned to look at me. I'd probably still be living with them, still chasing the next big idea, still convinced I was just one break away from success. Maybe. No maybe about it. You drew a line, and it forced everyone else to look at what they were doing. Mom and Dad had to face that they were enabling me. I had to face that I was a 30-year-old child. It didn't feel like I was helping anyone at the time. Of course not. It felt like you were being selfish. That's what we told you it was. But you were the only one being honest. He paused. I'm glad you did it, Marcus. I'm glad you protected yourself. Rachel was listening from the doorway. After Derek went back inside, she sat next to me. That must have felt good to hear, she said. It did. But also complicated. Part of me wishes I could have helped him without sacrificing myself. That there'd been a third option. There wasn't. Not with the patterns your family had. Sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to refuse to participate in it. She was right. I'd spent years wishing I could have been the supportive brother while also protecting my education. But the reality was that my family's dysfunction didn't allow for that middle ground. The choice was binary, enable or establish boundaries. Derek's promotion to general manager came with a significant raise. He and Sarah started house hunting, found a small 3-bedroom ranch that needed work. Derek called me to ask about the inspection report. I don't know half of what this means, he admitted. Something about the HVAC system and roof shingles and drainage issues. I walked him through it, explained what was urgent versus cosmetic, helped him negotiate repairs with the seller. It was the kind of thing an older brother should do, and doing it felt like we were finally building the relationship we should have had all along. They closed on the house in October. The whole family helped them move in. Dad and I assembled furniture while Mom and Rachel unpacked kitchen boxes. Derek and Sarah directed traffic, Frank the dog supervising from his bed in the corner. "This is nice," Dad said quietly, tightening a bolt on Emma's crib. They'd set up a nursery for when we visited. All of us together, doing something normal. "Yeah," I agreed. "It is." That night, after Emma was asleep and Rachel was reading in bed, I sat in our living room thinking about the journey we'd all taken. 8 years from that terrible Sunday dinner to this moment. 8 years of hurt and healing, distance and reconciliation, consequences and growth. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom: "Thank you for bringing Emma into our lives. She's given us a chance to be better grandparents than we were parents." I sent back a heart emoji, something I never would have done 2 years ago. Another text, this time from Derek, sitting in my house. My house. That I paid for with money I earned. Feels weird. Good weird. Thanks for being patient with me while I figured my life out. Proud of you, little brother, I wrote back. The company Christmas party was the following week. Rachel wore a red dress that made me forget we'd been up 3 times the night before with Emma. My boss pulled me aside during cocktail hour. "I wanted to give you a heads up," he said. "We're opening a new division focused on renewable energy projects. We'd like you to lead it." Lead the entire division? "You've shown strong leadership skills, Marcus. You develop people. You think strategically. And you have integrity, which matters more than technical skills at this level." The promotion would mean another significant raise, more responsibility, the chance to work on projects that actually mattered for the environment. It would also mean longer hours, more travel, harder decisions. I told Rachel in the car on the way home. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to say yes. But I also want to be present for Emma, for you. I don't want to become my dad, so focused on work that I miss everything else. Your dad worked those hours out of necessity and avoidance. You'd be working them because you found something meaningful. That's different." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "And unlike your dad, you've already proven you can set boundaries. You can take this job and still be present." I accepted the position the next day. My first major decision was hiring Tyler as a senior project engineer. He'd earned it, and I needed people I could trust. "You're not doing this because I stayed?" Tyler asked when I offered him the role. "I'm doing this because you're ready. You stayed, you learned, you grew. Now you get the reward." Christmas at our house was chaotic and perfect. Mom and Dad stayed in one guest room, Derek and Sarah in the other. Frank the dog had separation anxiety and howled until they let him sleep in their room. Emma was overstimulated by all the people and refused to nap. We opened presents on Christmas morning. I'd gotten Derek a leather-bound journal with his initials embossed on the cover. "For what?" he asked, confused. "For whatever you want. Goals, thoughts, gratitude lists. I've kept one since college. It helps." He flipped through the blank pages. "I'll actually use this. Thank you." Derek and Sarah's gift to us was a wooden toy chest Derek had built himself. It was simple but well made, sanded smooth and finished with care. "I took a woodworking class," Derek explained. "Turns out I like making things with my hands." Who knew? Mom gave me a photo album filled with pictures I'd never seen. Me at my high school graduation, at debate competitions, at the science fair where I'd won second place. In every photo, she or Dad were there in the background, watching. "I was there," Mom said softly. "I was always there. I just didn't know how to show you it mattered to me." The album also included recent photos: Emma's birth, Derek's wedding, family dinners at our new house. The visual progression from dysfunction to healing was stark. That night, after everyone was asleep, I found Dad in the kitchen making tea. "Can't sleep?" I asked. "Too much excitement." He smiled. "Emma's got energy." We sat at the kitchen table, the house quiet around us. "I've been thinking about something," Dad said. "When you refused to drop out, I was angry at you. I thought you were being selfish, choosing yourself over family. But you were the only one being realistic about Derek's pattern. You were trying to help your son. I was trying to avoid admitting I'd failed him. Every time Derek quit something, it reflected on my parenting. If I could just fund one more project, prove that he could succeed, then it would mean I hadn't messed up." He stirred his tea slowly. "But I had messed up. And the kindest thing you did for all of us was refuse to participate in the denial. I didn't do it to teach anyone a lesson, Dad. I did it because I was scared of losing my future." "I know. But sometimes the right thing and the self-protective thing are the same thing. You protected yourself, and it forced us all to face reality." We talked until the tea went cold, about parenting and regret and second chances. About how he was trying to be a better grandfather than he'd been a father. About how I was trying to learn from his mistakes while acknowledging his growth. "You're going to make mistakes with Emma," Dad said. "Different ones than we made, but mistakes nonetheless. The question is whether you'll be willing to see them and change." "I hope so," I said. "You will. You've already proven you can do hard things." Sarah miscarried a third time in February. This time, they decided to stop trying to conceive. The grief was different now, more acceptance than devastation. They'd started looking into adoption instead, filling out preliminary paperwork, attending information sessions. We might not become parents this way either, Sarah told Rachel during a visit. But at least we're moving forward instead of staying stuck in loss. Derek seemed more at peace than I'd ever seen him. He'd started therapy after the second miscarriage, was working through his need for external validation, his fear of being ordinary. My therapist asked me when I last felt genuinely proud of something, Derek told me over the phone. And I realized it was last month, when I handled a major staffing crisis at the restaurant without panicking. Nothing glamorous, just good management. But I felt competent, you know? That's worth more than any gastropub fantasy. Yeah, I'm starting to get that. Emma's first birthday party was a massive affair. Rachel went all out with decorations, a custom cake, more presents than one baby needed. All the grandparents were there, Derek and Sarah, my colleagues and their families, Rachel's parents who'd flown in from Oregon. Watching Emma destroy her smashed cake, seeing my family laughing and relaxed, I felt something shift into place. This was what I'd been protecting 8 years ago. Not just my education or career, but the possibility of this exact moment. A healthy family, honest relationships, a daughter who would grow up knowing her worth wasn't conditional. Derek helped me clean up after everyone left. You did good, Marcus, he said, wiping frosting off the wall. With all of this. The career, the family, the boundaries. You figured out what I couldn't. You figured it out too. Just took a different path. A longer, more expensive path, he laughed. But I got here eventually. That's what matters. The new division officially launched in March. I was managing 15 engineers, overseeing 3 major projects, traveling twice a month. It was intense but fulfilling. Rachel had cut back to part-time at her firm, giving us more flexibility with Emma. The balance wasn't perfect. I missed bedtimes, worked some weekends, occasionally felt torn between professional obligations and family needs. But I was present in a way my father hadn't been. I made Emma's pediatrician appointments, did morning drop-off at daycare, protected our weekends fiercely. Tyler flourished in his new role. He reminded me less of Derek now and more of who I'd been at that age, eager, capable, still learning when to trust himself. You changed my career trajectory, Tyler told me after successfully leading his first major project. I almost left for that startup. I'd be unemployed right now. You made the right call, I said. I just asked the question. But I understood what he meant. Sometimes all someone needs is one person who cares enough to make them think critically about their choices. I'd needed that person when I was 20 and deciding whether to drop out. I hadn't had it, so I had to be that person for myself. Now I try to be that person for others. For Tyler, for the younger engineers on my team, for Derek in his quieter moments when he doubted himself. Sarah and Derek brought home their son in September. Not through pregnancy, but through foster to adopt. He was 2 years old, had been in 3 different homes, needed stability and patience and love. Meet Owen, Derek said, holding the small boy who looked terrified and brave simultaneously. Watching Derek with Owen over the following months was like watching someone discover their purpose. He was patient in ways I'd never seen, gentle, consistent. He learned about trauma-informed parenting, went to therapy with Sarah to work through attachment issues, showed up every single day. This is harder than anything I've ever done, Derek admitted during one visit. But it's the first hard thing I haven't wanted to quit. Owen and Emma became immediate friends despite the age difference. We started doing monthly cousin dinners, building traditions, creating the family dynamic we'd all wished we'd had growing up. Mom and Dad were different grandparents to Owen than they'd been even to Emma. More aware, more thoughtful about not playing favorites, conscious of Owen's trauma history. We're learning, Mom said, watching Owen and Emma play. Still making mistakes, but learning. That seemed to be the theme for all of us. Learning, growing, becoming better versions of ourselves than we'd been. Not perfect, not without struggles, but genuinely trying. My 10-year college reunion happened in November. I almost didn't go, but Rachel convinced me. You should see where you came from, she said. Remember what you were fighting for. Walking around Penn State's campus, I remembered being 20 years old and terrified. Terrified of disappointing my parents, terrified of making the wrong choice, terrified that choosing myself meant I was selfish. I ran into my old roommate Jake at the reception. Marcus Morrison. I heard you're doing big things in Dallas. We caught up over drinks. He was a dentist now, married with 3 kids. When I told him about my family situation back then, his eyes widened. I never knew you were dealing with that, he said. You always seemed so together. I was barely holding it together. But you did. You held it together, made the right choice, built an amazing life. He raised his glass. To 20-year-old Marcus, who was braver than he knew. Flying home, I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been. The invisible son who never complained. The college student who chose his education over family approval. The young engineer building a career. The husband and father creating something new. Each version had led to the next, each choice building on the last. I hadn't known where I was going when I said no that Sunday. I'd just known I couldn't sacrifice my future for Derek's fantasy. But in protecting my path, I'd accidentally lit the way for everyone else to find theirs. Derek to his actual calling. My parents to honest self-examination. My own future family to healthier patterns. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappoint the people you love. Not because you want to hurt them, but because you love yourself enough to protect your own potential. I landed in Dallas late. Rachel and Emma picked me up from the airport. Emma was half asleep but smiled when she saw me. Rachel kissed me, took my hand. "How was it?" she asked. "Good. Really good, actually. Made me grateful for everything." "Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts. They made the good parts possible." Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to sacrifice yourself for someone else's unearned dreams. In protecting your own path, you create space for others to find theirs. Not through enabling or endless chances, but through the hard boundaries that force growth. Derek didn't need my college fund, he needed to fail, to struggle, to discover that real success comes from showing up daily, not from grand visions funded by other people's futures. My parents didn't need another chance to rescue their golden child, they needed to face the consequences of their favoritism and rebuild from a place of honesty. And I didn't need their approval, I needed to trust myself enough to walk away from dysfunction and toward my own truth. When you love yourself enough to draw that line, you teach everyone around you that they're capable of more than they thought. That's not revenge. That's hope wearing work boots, showing up every day to build something real.